Hey everybody, good morning. It's Lynn again, and I thought this morning I would take a few minutes to talk about this background. Well, actually the card. Everybody's asking me, how did you make that card? How'd you make that card? And I'm assuming that you probably are more interested in the background, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through the steps with you. I've tried to prepare some things ahead of time just to make it a little bit quicker. But it's really a pretty simple background, and you don't have to have everything that I'm using today. There's two of them here that I think people had really expressed a lot of interest in. You don't have to have the same stamps I have. You don't have to have the same inks that I have. You just use what you have. That's what I say. And I just like making this kind of background. I think it's fun. And let me just show you what you need, or again, trade things out for what you have. You don't have to go buy these things. This is just right now, today, it's my choice of what I want to use, but you don't think about running out and buying these things, because you can use watercolor paints, you can use ink refills, you can stamp your ink pad on something and then put water to it and make it work. So there's lots of things that you can do to make these backgrounds without buying distressed spray stains. It's just what I'm going to use today because it's what I used on these cards. So I just want to tell you what you're going to need for the card. And we're going to concentrate on this one, but I'm changing the colors up a little bit, a lot. I just wanted to do something different. So what I'm using on this are distressed spray stains. And on the card today that I'm making, I'm going to use Shaded Lilac, Dried Marigold, Pickled Raspberry, and Twisted Citron, because I'm always going to get Twisted Citron in. Okay, that's going to be the main colors of the cards. And then as I fine tune a little bit the flowers, I'm going to use these two colors, which are Mustard Seed and Antique Linen, to use in the center of the flower after I've already colored the rest of the flower, the colors that I'm going to choose for them. And sometimes I'll go into my stash of distressed spray stains and get some darker colors. But like, for example, this Dried Marigold is not really a very dark orange. And if I decide I want that flower to have a little bit more pop, if I can't get enough pop out of it with the Dried Marigold, then I will go and add another layer of a different orange that I have here, just to give it some more pop. Okay, so you need colors, whether it be, as I said, a pan paint or whatever your color of choice is. You're going to need a mister bottle of water. You're going to need some type of white paint. I use this, again, for flicking on the flowers mostly. I try to put white paint on them. That's the only thing I'm going to use it for. You're going to need the other thing I'll use it for is I use it in a stencil on here. So I might do some stenciling on this also. So I'm going to use one of these foam things and just to apply some of the paint. You're going to need a fairly good sized background type stamp. Now, a lot of us have tons and tons of Stampin' Up! Background stamps, and those are fine. This one, I believe, is from Unity. I bought it from somebody here on this site, and it's like part of a background. So this one is working for me, but if you only have a full background stamp, it is fine. Just ink parts of it. Like if it was a big square, you would just ink this part with Versamark, because you're going to Versamark it and then emboss it, heat emboss it with either clear or white embossing powder. So if you use a whole background stamp, just don't use the whole stamp. Just use a part of it. Draw off, what you want to use and ink that part, and then stamp it, and then put embossing powder over that and heat set it. So it's like a partial stamp. Let's see, I was going to say something else. Let's see. So you need a stamp. You'll also need a flower stamp. The one that I'm going to use today is Nature's Blossoms. On this one, I went ahead and used it today because it has a die with it. A lot of my flowers now, I don't cut out with a die. I cut them out with my Brother Scan and Cut, and I didn't want to have to do that today. I wanted to just have a die because not everybody's going to have a Brother Scan and Cut, but most people can do dies. This one is Altenew, as I said, Nature Blossoms, and I'm using the outline stamps for this, okay? And you'll need some type of a stencil. This is the one I'm going to use today because it was out. This is from My Favorite Things. It's called Punch Pattern. And then I'm going to use an elemental type stamp. This is one that my good friend Lisa Maxwell sent to me. I love it. I like to use it a lot. But there are lots of, you can go to Hobby Lobby and get little circle stamps. I just wanted this one, and she was so kind to send it to me. And I love to use it. But it's just kind of distresses it because it's got these funky stitches on it and so forth. It's old. She had it forever and never used it, so I don't know how easily accessible this is. You'll need some water in a cup, and that I think is about it. If I think of anything else, I'll add it as we go. Okay, so the first thing, and I did this really, I've kind of found this out by trial and error. If you can see on this particular, you'll need watercolor paper. That was the big thing that I needed to say. This is Canson 140-pound watercolor. It holds water, so you can move things around on it. Somebody commented on my card, I just love how flowy the water is or something, or the ink is. Well, that's just because it's water, because distress spray stains are very vibrant, and if you don't put water on there, it's just very stark. And I love stark, but if I want that bleeding kind of look, I have to have water. So this is just something that I'm going to work on. I know I can work on this pad, but I'm hoping you can see it better here. I'm going to go and spray. This is how I'm using the distress sprays today. I'm going to spray a little ink or stain on each of these colors. And I like this shaded lilac because it's not real dark. It's almost like a periwinkle color. I kind of like that. So if you notice, I didn't do the yellows on this. It's because I don't need that for this part of the card. The yellows are really just for the centers of the flowers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take, and you can see, look what I already did. I accidentally sprayed some of the stain on this. It really doesn't matter that much, but the other thing that I went ahead and did, again, to save time, was I went ahead and stamped the images of the flowers and embossed them, and then I die cut them so that they would be ready, again, just to save time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mist this with water, and you're going to see color come out because I oversprayed it. And as I said, that's okay. The other thing is you need to keep in mind that no two of these are ever going to look alike. And it takes a little practice to learn how to maybe not apply too much water and too much ink. It just takes practice. And they're not perfect. It's kind of grungy looking, but everybody seems to like that. So I'm going to do this right now for you, but I do have one that's already done because of the next step, because I didn't want to take time to dry this. So I've got everything set for the next step to make it a little bit faster. Okay, so what I do is I take a fairly good sized paintbrush, and I don't know, this does not have it does. It's a 4, probably what they call round. I'm not an artist, so I don't know. I'm a card artist. I don't really paint. And I dripped water all over that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some of the color. And so I'm going to put my finger on this because I want it to lay straight. Because I don't want it warping up, because once it warps up, then the paint or the ink will run off. Sometimes I'll just do like that and I'll just hold that down. So I'm just going to take some of the pickled raspberry, and I'm just going to start putting it on here very loosely, like that, okay? And I try to find colors that if they bleed together, they're not going to make brown. So the next color I'm going to come in is get that marigold color, and I'm going to start putting some oranges. Up here. And you can see how I've let it kind of puddle That's good. Let it puddle. Because when it puddles, it dries out and you have darker spots and lighter spots. And then what we're going to do on the next step is I'm going to accentuate those darker and lighter spots too. So with more ink once it's dry. So now I'm going to use the violet color. And as you can see, it's kind of a periwinkle. And I'm leaving white space. All this over here, except where I splattered it, I'm trying to leave white space. Okay, because I think white space is pretty too. It all has its purpose. So you can see I'm just adding a little bit more water to bleed this out a bit. Okay, and the last color I want to do is green, because my flowers, I'm always going to have green leaves. And so I try to include a little bit of green, but I have to be really careful with green because green seems to make brown with a lot of colors. But I still want my green in there, okay? That is how I make the first step of the background. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside over here and put something on it so that it dries flat. And it's going to take a little while to dry, so let me put a couple of the ink bottles on. Okay, so, sorry I bumped that. So coming back now, here is the one that I did earlier this morning. Okay, and you can see it's pretty similar, not exact. But now what I want to do is I want to intensify, and I did a little bit already. You can see here where there's darker spots in all of these colors so that it fades out and it's light. You can leave it like that, but I kind of like to add a little bit more color to it. To do that, I'm going to need pretty intense non-watered down distress sprays, and I try not to water these down particularly, but I know I put a wet brush into them, so I'm going to add a little bit more spray stain, and just to darken them up a little bit. Okay, so now what I'm taking is it's an aqua painter or whatever they call them now, water pen. And it's pretty dry. I've got a napkin here. I mean, it's wet, but it's not dripping. And I'm wiping it off on napkins off to the side because I want this color to be intense now. I don't want it to be really light, so I don't want it watered down. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to come in and add darker distress spray stains into this. I don't want to cover the whole thing. I'm just trying to give it some depth perception, I guess, with a little bit darker colors in there. Everybody's always saying, oh, your colors, your cards, they have so much texture and stuff to them. Well, sometimes that's just because you put extra layers on. So don't ever be afraid to keep adding extra layers. And so I'm going to do the same up here. Add some more of the marigold in. Again, this is where I could come in and add a brighter orange, but I think that the undiluted portion of this is just going to be fine, okay? And every time I clean my brush off, I bring it over to this napkin and I wipe out the excess water because, again, I don't want it diluted. So now we're going to go with the pink. And, you know, some people are like, oh, I don't want that line right there. Some people are really particular about that. A lot of this stuff will end up getting covered up by flowers, so it's just not critical if there's lines. But if you just kind of dab it, it will generally do good without making, it'll look kind of organic, I guess is a good word, okay? And the last color will be the green. And because this card is pretty well dried, except for what I'm adding right now, the green is just not going to bleed. I'm just adding darker green to it. That's it. Okay? So you can see now from before and after that it's definitely darker. So let me just try to heat this up just a little bit, just for a minute, and then I'll start on the flowers. I just want to get this going. I try not to blow the ink. I try to just get it drying some. And it dries pretty quickly. I do have a lot on there, so it's going to take it a hot minute to do it, but We'll set it aside and work on the flowers here. Okay. You don't want, if you can help it, you don't want your paper to bend up and warp, because that, like I said, it leaves running streaks down it. So sometimes you can just heat it on the back side for a minute and it'll bend it back the other way. Sometimes I just do like that and then set it aside, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, now for the flowers. The flowers, as I said, they've already been cut out with white watercolor paper, or white, it is white, watercolor paper, as well as it's been embossed. So very simply, what we're going to do with this is really pretty simple, y'all, is I'm going to water these back down again, and I am going to start dipping them into it. And I think I need just a little bit more green because I have 3 leaves here. So I'm going to take this first leaf, and your hands are going to get inky on this, and let me move it into the shot a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take the leaf and I'm just going to color it like that. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. If it's missing spots, it's fine. All right, so I'm going to set that one aside. I'm going to do all the leaves first. You can always get another color of green out too if you want to give the leaves a little bit more dimension. You can see as I'm setting these leaves out, they have, I don't know if you can see that there. Let me get it into the screen. You can see that they have a lot of pooling on them, and that pooling is going to give it a nice effect, okay? And one more leaf to do. Okay, and I'm just going to set it aside. And then we're going to come to the flowers. And today I'll do, let's see, on this one, well, I'll do what I did earlier this morning. That way we have the same things to work on, since I've got some flowers pretty much dried. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the pink leaf. Again, this color is called Pickled Raspberry. And I'm going to take the flower and I'm going to dip it in the same way that I did the leaves. And if you look and you kind of tilt it like this, it'll start pooling down toward the bottoms, which is how I like to make my flowers. I usually like the darker down at the bottom part of each petal. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. And then I'm going to do an orange one. Now the orange one, when I do this, because it's been watered down, it's going to be pretty light colored. But the next step, we can make that better, okay? So I'm going to squirt just a little bit more of the Distress Spray stain on here. And that darkened it up, okay? So now I'm going to set that aside to let it dry as it is. All right, now those have to dry. I don't want to use the dryer again, but here are some that I did earlier this morning that are dry, and you can see how they pooled here, 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 and the leaves are somewhat pooled. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do exactly what I did on the card a little bit ago. I'm going to have a napkin where I dry off my brush a good bit so that it's not soppy wet. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick up some of this straight color that does not have a lot of water in it, and I'm going to add it to the flowers where I want it, just to bring out some more dimension to the flowers, okay? You can see I'm just adding it on here. I'm staying away from the center because in a minute I'm going to do something to make that center lighter so that I can add the yellow to it. But I've got to get these to dry first. So I'll just make sure I have straight ink here. You can see as I keep doing this, it gets a little darker, because this time there's absolutely no water in this. So I'm just pooling dark ink at the corners, okay? So that's that one, and I am going to have to dry these here in a minute, but let's set them aside, and let's do the orange. As you can see, the orange is pretty light. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to make sure I have straight ink, no water, and I'm going to start doing exactly the same thing to this flower that I did to that one. Again, I just like the organic look better. I don't want it to look like I intentionally did it just a certain way. I just want it to look like that's how the water and the ink flowed, and that's what I ended up with. But I'm cheating a little bit here, and I'm adding some extra color. You want to leave light colors because that's how you show some dimension to the flowers, and it looks like maybe it's in the light, and you've got shadows and so forth. So, okay, so there's the orange one, made brighter. And I'm going to add a little to the leaves. And because this particular, let me go back and show you on this one. Yeah, this one has flowers. If you can see, I actually used like a more olive green in this one. I did use Twisted Citron, but somehow maybe it was already on my little palette that it had some of the more olive green in there. So when I did these flowers, I did add some of the olive to it just to tie it back into the olive that I'd put on the background, okay? But I don't have that on this one. There is no olive green on this background, so I'm just gonna go in here and just darken some spots up on these little leaves. Okay. Now that's it for those, and I don't have the next step, so I'm gonna have to dry these. I think this will dry faster than the other ones, so let's do that real quick. Sometimes the problem with doing this here is that they'll blow away on you. I normally put them in a box so that they don't go anywhere, but I'll just leave it here and show you what we're doing. And get them dried off. See, they're blowing away on me. Hold it down. If I keep my heater on the lowest pressure, I can stand it for a few minutes, a few seconds, but then I have to get something out to help me hold it because it gets really hot. But if I keep it kind of down on here, it will dry pretty quickly. I hope y'all are all having a pretty day where you're at today in Georgia. It's beautiful. The skies are blue. It's just beautiful out there. It's a little cool still, but I like the cooler weather because I have a lot of personal summers, and I like the cooler weather. So everybody's always like, I wish spring would hurry up and get here, and I'm thinking, not me. I kind of like the winter because I have more time to play in my stamp room and do other things I like to do, because when summer gets here, I'm outside doing flowers, planting flowers, what do they call it? Propagating flowers. I do a lot of digging up of daylilies and hostas and spreading them all over my yard. And I went out yesterday and I trimmed down all my hydrangeas, which I'm way late on doing, to be quite honest with you. They probably aren't going to bloom on me this year. But I trimmed them down, and I realized that some of them have multiplied so much. So I'm like, oh yay, now I have to go out there and dig those up and move them. But my woods are going to be full of pretty flowers here before long, so it'll be worth it. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, let's see, it was this one. I think it was this one. And these 3 leaves. Okay, the leaves, I don't have anything else to do on them, but on the flowers, you know, flowers are not all one color. They do have extra color in them. So what I typically do is they have the middle, whatever you call that. I should know. I do flowers. I should know. So I'm going to squirt a little bit of the mustard seed on here and a little bit of the antique linen. I usually start with the antique linen, and then I go, because it's lighter, and then I go and add the pop of the brighter yellow. Oh, before I do that though, let me show you what I'm going to do to get some of that color out. So with a clean brush, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to lay down just a little bit of water on these centers. The orange one is not very bright, so it would probably cover up. I'm going to lay down a little bit of water on those. And then I'm going to take a napkin and I'm going to soak it up. So you see how much lighter it is now, and you can see where I got it off. And I'm going to do the orange one the same way. The orange one's going to be fine for now. I am going to do just a little bit more on the pink, just to lighten it just a little bit more. If I let it sit there for just a second, it will take off more, I think. Let's see. Yep, so I got a little bit more off of it, okay? So now I've got not white centers, but closer to white centers that I can go and put the yellows into. And I just dab it on, and you can see that the linen is just kind of a brownish, a light brownish gold tone. So I'm gonna put that in like that. I do not have to wait for it to dry, and then I'm gonna come back and pick up some of the brighter yellow so that I can make this pop. Because if I don't make this pop out a little bit more on the orange one, it's just not gonna show up that much because it's just all too light. So there are the two flowers finished at this point. Okay, let me just heat set those and see if we can move to the next part of it. I'll set them for a minute and then I'll go back to the background. And I'm not going to do a sentiment today. You can do any kind of sentiment you want. The one that I did on the purple card before was a sympathy type card. I don't think I'm going to do that on these bright colors. I think I'll try to stick with something happy, a happy birthday or something. But I'm not going to do the sentiment. Y'all can do sentiments. You have your own sentiments. Do what you want on that. You know, the strip sentiments are really, really good. I highly recommend getting some of the Tailored Expression ones. They are worth every penny I've paid for them. I use them all the time. But there are some other good ones, and let me show you one real quick, because if you're looking for something inexpensive, and let's see if I can remember who makes it. Bear with me just a second. Sometimes I forget who makes things, and I just have to look for it in here. I bought it from the group. It's not that. I thought it was Stampendous. I'm sorry, I should have had this out, but I was just thinking about that y'all would... Oh, shoot. I don't know where it is. I'm going to find it, though, and I'm going to post a picture of it in the comments below. There are several people on our site that sell this particular stamp for like $5, $5 or $6, and it has a lot of sentiments on it that you just, they're individual, so you don't do them all at one time unless you lay them all out at one time, and then you just individually cut them up as you want to use them. And it's a really great stamp set. It has things like sending warm fuzzies and thinking of you, and there's some really good ones on there. And so there are some people on the site that sell it, and I would get it if I was you, if you want some strip ones for a much less price than what you do for all the Tailored Expression things. As I said, the Tailored Expression ones are worth every penny to me. I love them. But I understand, you know, when you buy the stamps and then you buy the dies, it just really adds up. So, okay, so this is pretty well dry. It might have a few darker spots in it, but I don't think it's going to affect us for what we're doing next. The next thing I want to do is add some circles to this card, just to add a little extra. And y'all, I'm getting ready to get real creative because this is my stamping block, and I'm gonna use it with the ink on it, because I am not letting that ink go to waste. No way. But you know what? I'm gonna have to. Darn. Let me see if I can find a bigger stamping block. Shoot. Hold on. Let me just show you what I do next. Okay, y'all, there's no way I'm letting that ink right there go to waste, so I'm going to set this aside for a second. And this is just a blank piece of white watercolor paper. And I'm just going to dab up a lot of this ink that's on here. I will use this. I promise you this will get used in something. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, how'd she do that? Because I just don't let ink go to waste. I don't care for the green on there, but that's okay. I'm just not letting that ink go to waste. Okay, so that's what I made. I'll come up with something on that and I'll post it and I'll tell you, this is what I made with that ink that was on my stamping block, okay? So, I'll use this side because it's dry. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to put the large one. And you have to just kind of drop these because they lose their round if you try to shape them. So you just kind of want them to go natural on there. I don't know if y'all can see that. So that's good enough. Okay, and I'm going to get my black ink pad out. This is the one that I use a lot, VersaFine Claire. Ginger talked me into this one. She said I'd never want anything else, and she was right. I love it. And so then I'm going to bring my card back in, and I'm just going to stamp circles on here. And it's okay that I missed some of that because I'm getting ready to put a small circle on there also. I just do it kind of randomly. And some of this, it's not even necessarily going to stick on because there's embossing there, so it's not going to stay there. And then I'll take my small one, which this block is way too big for a small one. And I usually just offset them a little bit. And like this one, I might go up here and do that just to fix where I messed up. Okay. And now I've got the circles on there. So that was that step. And I need to go back and look at my card and make sure what I need to do next. Okay, I tell you right now, I know the thing I need to do next is clean up my mat because I can see black circles all over it. And it'll get on the rest of your cards, okay? So now that's done. Next, I'm gonna take my stencil and I'm gonna use white paint. And I just do this again to add another layer on here. You don't have to use much, but I usually try to put it somewhere where it will really show because it's not obviously not gonna show on the white. So I'll do that. And I just this is just a small Stampin' Block that I have, and I'm gonna put a little bit of white paint on it. And it takes more white paint than you think because, well, the sponge soaks up so much of it. So I'm just gonna hold that there, and I don't want it to be square. I'm just gonna randomly put a little bit of extra texture to it, okay? So I might come up here, turn it around so I don't get it in that one. And I might turn it this way. I don't necessarily want them to be all the same way. And you can see that I've got a little bit there at the top. And I might come down here and do a tiny bit more. You know, the point is not to cover up what you've done. It's just to add another look to it, not to take away from it, okay? So really the sponge needs to be cleaned out fairly quickly because it will dry and get hard in there, but we'll set that aside for now. Okay, so next, we'll set this aside and let that paint dry. We're gonna go back to the flowers and the leaves that we finished. And I'm gonna take my splatter box, which I know is gross but kind of cool looking. And I'm just gonna lay these out in here. And I know that all this video is getting long, but y'all asked for it. I can't help it. I can only do this so fast. So I'm gonna take my little block again. I'm gonna put some white paint on it again. I'm gonna take my aqua painter, put a tiny bit of water on it because I need to clean it out. Actually, it had some yellow in it. And I'm just gonna mix it a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna start splattering. And I don't care if it has big splatters. I didn't want water on it though. I did get water on it. And you have to kind of splatter a lot because it goes all over the place. Let me get that water up that I just saw. I don't want that on there. Okay. And you can see there's a big blob there. That's just gonna take a while to dry, but I don't care that it's there. It just adds something else to the flowers, okay? So sometimes you have to get kind of close to make them show up. Okay, that's enough. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so I need to let those dry. And then the only thing you have left to do, and let's pretend that I'm working with flowers that are finished, but since they're wet with white paint, we're gonna go back to the ones that we did earlier in the video. And I'm just gonna lay these out in a way that, you know, is attractive to me. And I'm just gonna give you a hint that I do. Most of the time, I will lay them out, and these are not gonna show up as good right now because they don't have all the extra colors in them. But I will lay these out, and then I will take my camera on my phone, and I will take a picture of it. And I'll say, because I can see it better in a picture than I can just looking at it with my eyes. I think it's just better to take a picture of it, look at the picture, and even take a couple pictures of it different ways, and then flip pictures back and forth and compare what you've got. So I'm just laying that out just quickly. I don't particularly like that. I would probably on this one, I'd probably put a sentiment right across the middle if it was a thin enough strip, and back it with some other color, frame it, because this is 4 by 5 1/4, so it needs to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I would probably put a purple or maybe a pink or even a black. I think that's what we did on this one. I went with black, so it's got a black card base on it. And that's it, guys. As I said, it's really simple. Just remember to use your water, and water makes the paint bleed, and then go back and add some texture and depth to it by adding non-diluted color, and then adding some type of an elemental stamp and possibly a stencil. Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. If you try this, please, please, please tag me and let me know. I just love to see if you've learned something from it. I love to see what you create because everybody's ideas are different. So I like sharing with you, but I like most of all seeing what you create. So everybody go out there and have a great day, and I will talk at you later.